Hello, and welcome to part 2 of my Path of Exile Beginner's Guide. If you have not seen part 1, I highly recommend you go back and watch part 1, especially if you're a newer player. Link in the top right notification thingy and in the description below. And as I covered quite a few times in part 1, there are a lot of choices to make in Path of Exile. Therefore, I'm not going to cover everything in specific detail, rather give you a general overview of things, enabling you to make your own informed decisions and experimentations. After all, learning is part of the fun in PoE. Trust me, you'll understand once you get started. It is a lot of fun. Also in part 1, the background footage really didn't relate to what I was saying on screen. It was just me playing a character and doing some stuff, just random like B-roll type footage. In this video, everything will happen in the game, so I can show you what's happening in real time. All right, enough with this intro. Let's get right into the first thing we're talking about is combat here. Just the general overview of combat won't take long. You can skip ahead to another section if you're already familiar with how ARPGs work in combat in general. But the first thing, before you go, the first thing you do, as soon as you kill that zombie and you pick up your first skill, make sure you have your skill. Open up your inventory. Make sure you have whatever gem it is. For me, I'm playing the Ranger, so it's Burning Arrow. The first thing you do, down here at the bottom, this is your default attack. This is the left click bind. So your default attack is left click. Don't do that. You don't need a default attack at all in this game. So change this from default attack to move only. And then the second thing you do is obviously socket your skill gem so you can actually attack stuff now. That is the first thing you do. So how the combat basically works is you have a primary skill and then you have a bunch of secondary skills to support it. So in this case, it's going to be Burning Arrow because we literally just spawn. That's the only skill we have access to. And then you're just going to kill stuff. And then if you get low health, you pop your flask. You have a health flask here. It starts with 2 small life flasks and 1 small mana flask. If you have low health, use your health flask. You can see I'm just going full health. If you get low mana, which I'm pretty low because I've been using, there you go. You pop your mana flask. That's literally the basics of combat. That's all you need. However, I do want to stress the importance of using flasks. There's tons of flasks in this game. I won't cover all of them. I won't even come close to covering all of them, but use your flasks very consistently, because how the charge system works in this game is killing monsters gives you more charges on your flask. Very simple concept. So the more monsters you kill, the more often your flasks will be up and the more often you can use your flasks. So don't be scared. You don't have to go back to town to refill them. You don't have to do anything. They refill automatically. You can see here, I'm at 14 charges. I'll kill 1 monster. Boom, I'm at 15 charges. So let's talk about the skills that you use and the gear that you acquire on each class. Here's the big point. Any class can use any skill, any weapon, any piece of armor, anything. There are no restrictions on what a class can do. Now, there is one exception, and it's how well each class does everything, and that comes in the form of your Ascendancy class. Don't worry, we'll cover that in the passive tree section. It's a completely different topic, but for the most part, you can do anything you want on any character at any time. Now, there are restrictions to what you can use and when you can use it, coming in the form of your base stats. So if we look up here, we have strength, intelligence, dexterity. 3 base stats. Every character has these stats. Now, your starting class only determines, number 1, the value of your base stats, also your starting place on the skill tree. So you can see I have 14 strength, 14 int, but 32 dexterity, which makes sense because I'm a ranger, bow and arrow type of thing. So it makes sense that my dexterity is a little higher. Now, this is the skill tree, of course. We're going to cover this in a different section. Don't worry, it looks a little daunting, but I'm the ranger, so I start right here. So these little wheels right here are the starting points. This is Ranger, Duelist, Marauder, Templar, Witch, and Shadow. And then in the middle here's the Scion. Don't worry about any of this. Just know that the class that you choose only determines your starting location on the passive tree, as well as your base stat values. Again, I cannot stress it enough. The class you choose does not really affect anything you can do in the game, minus the Ascendancy class, and we'll cover that in a second. This goes for skills, weapons, armor, anything to do in the game. The restrictions come from these 3 values right here, not the class you choose. You get increases to these values from leveling up. You get them from items. You get them from passive benefits. There's tons and tons of ways to increase these values. So talking about restrictions, let's talk about the skills that you use. So as you know from the tutorial, you have sockets on your gear. You can see I have a green socket and a green socket, and they are linked together. The links that you have determine how useful your skills are going to be. So here we have Burning Arrow linked with Pierce. So it has 1 support gem. If you hover over the skill here, you can see in the top right of the gem, but that means it's supported by something. So you can't put in a different color gem into a different color socket. They have to match. So green can go into green, red goes into red, blues go into blue, etc. Another important point is just because you can put it in doesn't mean it'll actually do anything. So here I have a melee gem called Dual Strike. If I put it in here, it can go there. It's a green socket, but look. Now I have no green P. It's not supported by anything. That's because Pierce requires it to be a projectile skill. So where I see that is support and projectile right under the name. Pierce support, and then right under that is support and projectile. Those are called the tags of the gem. Make sure you read the gem in its entirety and pay attention to the tags. So obviously, this is not going to support a skill that doesn't have a projectile. Dual Strike does not have a projectile. It's an attack and it's a melee. Those are the 2 tags. So take this back out, put Burning Barrel back in, boom, there's the Pierce again, because Burning Arrow says attack, projectile, there's a projectile, fire, and bow. As the projectile tag, therefore it can be supported by Pierce. So at the end of the day, all this means is experiment. Have fun. Do whatever you want. It's going to suck at first. You're not going to do a lot of damage. You're going to get frustrated. And in those cases, I'd recommend using a beginner's guide, because that will even that playing field out. It'll smooth out all the wrinkles, and it'll help a lot in your first character. So if you want to use a build guide, go ahead and do it. There's a lot of beginner guides out there for whatever you want. But if you're the type of person that likes to figure things out, again, just take the time, read what's going on, and you'll be fine. Let's move on to the passive tree and ascendancy classes. All right, so here we are with the passive skill tree. And yes, I moved the webcam around. I did a few changes here and there, so hopefully they're not terrible. So as the name suggests, it's a passive skill tree, meaning everything here that you see, all of this stuff, and by the way, I'm not covering the whole tree. There's quite a few things to cover here. So as the name suggests, everything is a passive benefit to your character. There's no active skill changes, nothing. I mean, it'll change how things interact with one another, which is the whole point. But in terms of giving you a new skill to use, that's not what this tree does. So the biggest thing I can recommend is for a new player, you have to go for life nodes. So anything to do with maximum life. Yes, there is an alternative to life. It's called energy shield, but I strongly recommend new characters stay away from energy shield. Don't bother with energy shield. Every single character in this game can be played with life as their health pool, their life. So obviously you don't want to only go for life, because if you only go for life, you're not going to deal any damage. And if you don't deal damage, then stuff will just hit you until you die, and then therefore all your life is meaningless in the first place. So it's a balance between finding a good amount of life and finding a good amount of damage. So the best way I can recommend to get damage out of the passive tree is to pick an archetype for your character. So by that, I mean a bow and arrow, that's your archetype. Dual swords, that's your archetype. One sword and shield, that's your archetype. Two-handed weapon, that's your archetype. So stick to a specific way to play the game and then build your entire character around that. You don't have to do a specific skill. Once you get more experience with the game, then yes, you are building your character literally one primary skill, which we discussed in the first section to this video. So after you pick an archetype, I would recommend just searching up here. So you have a search bar in your passive tree, life, search life. And then anything here that's glowing, you can see all this stuff's glowing, right? Herbalism, that's a very good life node. 10% max life is good. Most nodes are 4 or 5% like this. I was about to say 4, and then of course it's a 5%. So this one's 5%. This one up here gets some evasion. It's also 4%. So most life nodes are these are 4. So either 4% max life or 5%. So anything over that is really good. And by the way, these ones that have like a little gold border, you can see like there's no border, and then that big gold one. These are called notable skills, which usually provide a bigger bonus to your stats than a regular passive node with no border. And then over here, this one is big, like a big gold border. This is a keystone node, Volpack. So it completely changes the way your character functions in one specific way. Usually the keystones in this game have like a double-edged sword kind of effect, where you have a really good upside and then a really bad downside, depending on how you look at it. Obviously, you can build around certain things, so downside doesn't necessarily mean a downside. And a good example for this would be something like Chaos Inoculation over here, where your maximum life becomes 1, but you're immune to chaos damage. So this is talking about energy shield. We won't talk about it in detail, but something like this you can easily turn into it doesn't actually give you a downside at all, is, you know, the only thing actually happening with this keystone. There's no really downside to it. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. Find the life nodes, make your way to the life nodes, pick up some damage along the way. There you go. That's the basics of the passive tree. So it may be a little confusing because, hey, I can only search one thing at a time and then it's glowing, but I can't really map my tree out. Like if I try and click or like try and do something, I can't really do anything. The solution to that is downloading a program called Path of Building. Now, Wooly, are you really about to recommend some third-party software to me as part of the base game? Yes, I am, because it's that good. So Path of Building is way more than just a passive tree planner. As you can see inside this program, here's the whole passive tree. Look, I can mega zoom. Like here's as far as I can zoom on this path. Look, look, it's still there. Watch this, baby. Watch this. Oh my gosh, you can see the whole passive tree. Look how far we could zoom. So absolutely, I recommend this program. It's way more than just a passive tree planner. You can see over here we have like a skills tab, so I can grab some skills here. Let's say I want to do a smite build, dude, and then I want to do like a poison smite build, and then it'll do it. And then I have smite right here, and look. My main skill is smite, and it's showing me average damage. There's so much going on with this program. I highly recommend you download this thing. So the only thing I recommend using it for right now as a new player is the passive tree benefit. So it'll look like this when you go in. Don't save. So it'll be here as a big screen. I mean, these are all my different builds. Like, woo, look, I have so many builds, and these are all my big folders, all that crap.
So you just go make a new folder if you want, and then just click up here in new. This will start a new character. Boom. This is the opening screen. And then you're going to go up here, whatever class you're playing. So I chose the Ranger. So that was not the Ranger. Here's the Ranger. And then this is your Ascendancy class. We will cover those in just a second. Don't you worry. So the benefit to this is being able to visually map out where you want to go on the passive skill tree. Like, I don't have to explain it, guys. I really don't have to explain it. Do you really want to look at this and only this while you play the game? No. You want some colors, right? You want some colored action going here. So I want something like this. I want this node. I want that node. I want this node over here. I want this one. I want this node. I want that node. And I want that node, okay? Okay, now when oh, look at that. This is so much better. Look, that's so much better. I can follow the path. I'm going to go here, guys, and they're going to path all the way over here to amplify, okay? That's my build. I'm going to go all the way over here. I highly, highly, highly recommend you check out Path of Building here. It is a very in-depth program. Like I said, there's tons of different tabs here, tons of things to check out. But for now, just stick to the passive skill tree and literally map out where you want to go. Speaking of where you want to go, let's talk about where you go on the passive skill tree, why you do it. So generally, you want life. You want everything, any and everything to do with life. So down here you have a search bar. So I would do this. First thing you do when you make a new character, choose your class up here like we did. So choose whatever class you're playing. I'm playing the Ranger. Hello game. I'm playing Ranger. And then second thing I want you to do down here in the search bar, search L-I-F-E, life. Okay, anything that has a red circle, good. These are good nodes, okay? So to better demonstrate what I mean by this, here's a quick example of a build. So this is a dual-wield sword character who relies on critical strike to boost my damage even further. And just to prove the point of any class can do anything, I'm doing the Ranger. So Ranger, you know, bow and arrow, by the way, but no, you can do anything you want on any class. So I'm not going to cover every point in detail, but just know that it revolves around life nodes, sword nodes, critical strike nodes, and dual wielding nodes. That's it. Those are the only types of nodes I'm going for. So again, pick an archetype, get a lot of life, and then around that life, get the damage that suits your archetype best. So I'm not going to choose spell damage on this build because I'm not using spells. I'm using attacks. So again, I'm not going over every detail on this tree. In fact, I'm hardly going to cover anything at all. But right now, what I'll do is I'll put arrows going to the specific types of nodes. So here's all the life nodes. Here's all the crit nodes. Here's all the dual wield nodes. And here's all the sword nodes. And some of them overlap, like over here, for example. This one gives you physical damage with swords, critical strike chance with swords, crit multiplier with swords, and this one only gives critical strike chance, critical strike multiplier. So these are broad, these are specific to only swords. So those kind of overlap, but still you guys get the general idea. So that's the general idea with the passive tree. It's really not that hard. Once you get started, once you make your first character, maybe 2, maybe like 10, then you'll understand what the passive tree is doing. Again, Path of Building is an invaluable tool to have, and this search bar down here makes everything easier for a new player. So if I want some life, boom. There's all the life nodes on the tree. Big, bright red circles so you can't miss them. Let's say I'm doing dual wield, so I type in dual. Boom, there's all the dual wield nodes. You want some crit? Here you go. Type in crit. Boom, there's everything to do with crit. Now, this doesn't mean every crit node is beneficial to you because over here, like if you're not doing swords, if you're using daggers or axes or something, critical strike chance with swords is not going to do anything for you. Whereas this one will, because it's just critical strike multiplier. Just blanket statement, not specific to a type of weapon. So to do a final recap here, choose an archetype that you want to go for. So if you want to do one-handed swords, do it. If you want to do bow, do it. But you have to stick to that archetype. Then the next step is to find a good amount of life nodes. You should be sitting around 150% increased life from the tree in Path of Building. So here you can see percent increased life from tree, 198%. That is a very good amount for a lot of characters. And then step 3 is just get damage nodes around your life nodes that are suitable to your archetype. And what I mean by that is if you're doing swords, get sword nodes. If you're doing crit, get crit nodes and sword nodes. Now there is a ton of context that goes into how the passive tree actually plays out. As you can see, there's quite a lot of choices. So if you need some additional help with the passive tree, leave a comment below. I'm sure many people will gladly help you out, and I'll definitely be reading the comments as well, so I can definitely leave some replies. But finally, let's move on to the last section, Ascendancy classes. So here we go, Ascendancy classes. Ooh, you've been hyping these up for like 2 episodes now, Wooly. They're going to be super complex, right? No, not really. All you need to know is that it's a class on top of your class. That's it. So each class has 3 choices for their Ascendancy class, except for the Scion, who only has 1 because she's like the jack of all trades. Like, ooh, fancy special girl. So what I recommend is inside Path of Building. Again, I'm going to highly, highly, highly recommend you download Path of Building. I can't like hold your hand, hold your mouse and like, all right, you got to drag your mouse over to Path of Building, guys. Go download it. Because with Path of Building, it gives you this big overview with the skill tree and you can see exactly what you want to do. But also it shows you all of your choices for Ascendancy classes. So here are the 3 Ranger choices. This is Deadeye, Pathfinder, and Raider. Those are my only 3 choices. And if you look over here, so I'm the Ranger class. This drop down menu, those are your Ascendancy class. So Raider, boom, now it's lit up. Deadeye, now it's lit up. Pathfinder, now it's lit up. Now I'm not going to go over the specific details of how to get your Ascendancy class and what exactly it entails, but just know that once you get to Act 3, that's when you can start looking for your Ascendancy class stuff. And you'll see some quest markers beforehand. Again, I'm not spoiling anything. I'm not going to go over the details of it, but just know that your choice of Ascendancy class and the points that you take in your Ascendancy class are very important. Each Ascendancy class has a maximum of 8 points you can spend, and realistic for you newer players, you're probably only going to have 4, maybe 6 points to spend with. It depends on how far you get with your first character. So to recap with Ascendancy classes, they are a class on top of your class that has purely positive benefits. They each have their own separate passive tree, and each class has 3 choices for their Ascendancy class, except for Scion, who gets 1. These points are very good, but there's also very few of them to get. So you can expect either 4 or 6 points to spend on your first few characters. And again, it'll make sense once you get going with this. And that's pretty much it, guys, with the passive tree, with ascendancies, with everything in this video. So again, as always, just take the time, seriously, take the time to read the effects of stuff. Take the time to look ahead, map out what you want to do, and learn the game when it comes down to it. So I hope you guys enjoyed the second part of the beginner's guide. In the final episode to the beginner's guide, which will be part 3, we'll cover how to do damage, why you're not dealing damage, how to stay alive, and why you're not staying alive. So we'll get into details on all that stuff. So please leave your questions and your feedback below in the comments. I read it all, I promise. If you're interested in following me live, you can check me out at twitch.tv/woollygaming. That's all one word, twitch.tv/woollygaming, where I stream Risk of Rain 2 as of now. But once Legion comes out, which is patch 3.7, comes out on June 7th, I will be streaming PoE for quite a long time. Thank you for watching, and look out for part 3.